Hey there, Fletcher from All Things Overlanding here, and today I'm going to be telling you about this LF Bros all-in-one diesel heater. I've used this for the last couple months, and normally when I talk about a product, I'm usually just giving you like dimensions, specs, a little bit of an idea of what comes with it, ideas for what type of setup it may work well with, that kind of thing. In this case, I've actually used this thing quite a bit, and as you can see, I mean, it's covered in diesel, it's covered in dust and stuff, it's ridden in the back of my truck. I've used this thing extensively in the last few months, and I've been really impressed with this thing. So I'm going to give you a little bit more of kind of my thoughts. I'm going to talk about pros and cons because there are some cons. There are also some really nice pros with this thing. This is a little bit on the pricier side, but since I got this, they've actually sort of changed it around and lowered the price. This thing I've seen as low as like low 200s to about 250 bucks. So it's in the same ballpark as some of the lesser known or less expensive brands, but with some really premium features to it. So again, I'm going to walk you through everything to do with the LF Bros all-in-one diesel heater today. Whether you don't have this heater and you're thinking about it, this is going to be a great video, or if you do have it and you have some questions, this may also be a helpful video for you as well. So let's dive into the LF Bros all-in-one diesel heater.
Understand where it came from, but you got it, my got it. It began in the land of the sandstorm. I fought it, though I wanted everything to do with what you give to me. Loosening my grip.
All right, guys, so as you can see, and as I mentioned, this thing is filthy, and I apologize for that, but I keep it in the back of my truck. So when I drive down, you know, a gravel road in the national forest, it gets covered in dust. It's also pretty easy to spill diesel on. I'm going to kind of talk you through that and tell you why here in a second. So as you can see, I've spilled diesel on it, but I mean, it's held up really, really well, and it's been awesome. It's been super reliable. I have seen some things on Amazon about, you know, people having problems with it starting up and stuff. I've seen that on pretty much every diesel heater I think I've ever had, but I've had no problems with this, whereas I have had some with some of the no-name brands that I've had or the less expensive ones before. And with this thing, it's just been really super easy to use and really nice. So again, I'm going to kind of walk you through all the features. I'm going to start with the unit itself, then I'm going to move into this awesome bag that they include with it, and then I brought all the other components with it too. Now, I don't use these every single day, but I'm getting ready to redo the whole back of my truck so I don't have an open bed. I'm going to do an enclosed bed rack, and I plan to build this diesel heater into that build. And so some of this stuff like the remote controller, that sort of thing, will come in handy. So again, I'm going to walk you through all this stuff because it could be something that's useful for your build, or it could be something that you could, you know, that's a nice to have but you don't really need, like the AC plug, that kind of thing. So again, let's start with the diesel heater. So the diesel heater itself is pretty good size, and I'll throw the dimensions up here on the screen. So it's not a tiny little diesel heater. It's that more cubic style diesel heater. But the biggest thing that I like about this thing is the sealed diesel container. So a lot of these cheaper diesel heaters just have a very inexpensively made plastic cap, and it has a vent hole in it, and that means if you put this thing in your vehicle, you are going to spill diesel all over the inside of your vehicle. This diesel that's on here is not from it sloshing out. None sloshes out. This is an automotive grade cap. So just like, and you can see I've actually overfilled it, which is why there's diesel all over it. It fills up fast. So if you're not watching, that is why I've got diesel all over this thing, is because I filled it up and I wasn't paying attention, and all of a sudden it was at the top and it went whoop right out. So when it gets to about that white plastic inside of the tank there, I would stop. Don't go past that thinking, oh, I can get as much diesel in here as possible, because it will overfill. But again, this is an automotive grade fuel cap. So when you close it, it actually, just like the one on your vehicle, you'll hear it here in a second. It actually, you just turn it until you hear it click, and then you know that it's all sealed down, and that will not leak diesel, which is amazing because, again, most of these that I've had, I put them in the bed of my truck, say over here on the side, and then I get to camp, and a quarter or a fifth of my tank of diesel has sloshed out on the bumpy trails while I've been getting to camp, and then I've lost a bunch of my diesel. So having a truly sealed diesel cap is a really nice benefit, and something that makes this worth a little bit more than the other less expensive diesel heaters. Now, another thing that I like is these handles. So they are really beefy. They feel really good. They're made of metal. They fold flat so that they're out of the way, but then when you want to lift this this thing up, they fold right up, and then you've got two handles there. Again, when you're not using them, you can just put them right down. Now on the side here, this is your exhaust port. And I like this because it's already built in and you don't have to access it. With a lot of these, you have to like uncover it, or you have to open up a box or get inside like the suitcase style to get to them. This thing is just built into the side. Now, one thing that I will say is this gets really hot. So like if you have a tailgate cover like me with this foam on it, I would not set it on it because it can burn the foam. So I know one question that I've gotten quite a bit from people is, you know, how do you sort of mount your diesel heater, or where do you put it? So just to kind of give you guys a little tour here of how I kind of run mine. I actually have mine hardwired via these two cables here to 12 volt, which goes up here into my battery box. So basically that comes out of my battery box there, comes straight from the battery. So I don't have any restriction or anything like that. I'm literally just wired up to a 200 amp hour LiFePO 4 battery. And I can run this thing overnight for probably 12 to 14 hours, and it takes about 6 to 8% of that battery. So, you know, and then I've got solar that tops it back off. And also have the ability to plug it into shore power thanks to the red arc that controls it. So that is kind of nice and helps me be able to run this thing for a really long time. In addition to that, I bought this tire step, and I'll put a link in the description down below to this tire step. It was only about 40 bucks, and it's actually pretty nice. Like it folds totally flat. So this part folds up, and then the part that goes over the tire folds down. And then I put it in my drawers. So I just always got it. The other nice thing is, since it's just a step, it can actually hold up to like, I think 350 pounds. So like if I wanted to use this to like access up here or to put my tube up there, I've used this thing as a step before, which is a nice extra thing to have. So if you needed to access stuff on the roof or something, you could use this as a step. But I actually found that it just fits perfect to just set the LF Bros diesel heater on top of, lets my exhaust come out the side without touching anything. And then my tube goes straight up into my tent. So previously I was setting this on the ground, but I found that I had to like stack some like logs underneath of it or use my leveling blocks or something, just because I didn't want the hot side of the bottom there touching the ground or like lighting the grass on fire or anything like that. Whereas with this step, it just keeps it up off the ground. It solves all those problems for me. Now on the front here, you've got these sort of proprietary style power supply plug and then a controller plug. Now I'm going to show you those pieces here in a second. There is a power supply that can plug into this. I have been using, though, straight from my power box back there, I just basically wired a positive and a negative with eye bolts on the end of them. And then on the back of the heater, there's also just a straight positive and negative plug. So another thing that I like is right here is your intake. So they've got that separated away from the exhaust. But the nice thing about it is, unlike most of these cheaper diesel heaters where you have to run another tube with a filter that's not even a filter, it's a piece of plastic with nothing inside of it, away from the diesel heater. It's just another set of stuff you have to keep track of and not lose and then hook up every time you want to use it. You hook up your exhaust and you hook up your power, you turn it on, and you're ready to go, which I love how simple that is and how easy it is to use. Now on the front here, this is where your heat is going to come out. So this is where you're going to connect your tube to, your like duct that you're going to run up into your rooftop tent. And again, I'm going to show you that in a second because they've got some really nice pieces that come with this to make hooking this up as easy as possible. On the front here, you can see it will hold up to 5 liters of the diesel, but it's got a viewable window, which I like. So now one thing is, as you can see right now, it's kind of sunny. I can't really see the diesel at all. So what I found is if I pop the lid off and shine my flashlight, say from my phone or just from a separate flashlight down into here, then it makes it super easy to see exactly where your fuel level is. Now, one last thing here on the side is that they do give you a Celsius to Fahrenheit conversion. Unfortunately, it does not, and this is one of the cons, it does not on the display allow you to convert to like Fahrenheit, for example, if you're in the US. So it just shows you Celsius. But to counter that, they did give you this little chart so you can see, 29 degrees is 84.2 degrees, et cetera, et cetera. So next, let's dive into the bag. So I really love this. They give you this really nice little bag with this sort of molly on it. It comes with all of your hardware inside of it. So basically all this stuff came inside of this bag. Now I've kind of gone through it again because I've been using it for a while. I kind of went through and said, hey, I don't need this or I don't need that. And I kind of removed that stuff, but I wanted to bring it to show you guys for the video again, what is included with this thing. But I've kind of narrowed this down to just exactly what I need to run the diesel heater for myself. And there's plenty of room in here. I mean, I could store other stuff, first aid or something if I wanted to. But so here is the remote. Now this is a pro and a con. This remote works great. You can turn it on and off. You can turn the temperature up and down. When you turn the temperature up and down, what you're actually doing is turning up the amount of kilowatts that the heater is. So it's a 5 kilowatt heater, but you can turn it down to as low as 1.4 and up to 5. So I'm going to talk a little bit about fuel consumption when you adjust those temperatures here later. I'm going to go through pros and cons of everything, but I want to stick with just showing you what is in the bag and what I use with the diesel heater right now. But then I'll get to that here in a little bit. But so you do get this remote. It works really well. It's super simple, on, off, plus, minus, turns it up and down. You can turn it on and off, right? Very, very simple. But when we unzip this bag, which again is a really nice size bag, it's a really nice quality bag. Like, it's got the Molly on the front of it. It's got their little logo. It's got a little pockets in the back here. So again, you could throw cords or you could throw the remote in there. I just clipped it to the zipper here. Once you get it open, it kind of just opens up flat. So that makes it really easy to access everything. But again, here is your exhaust tube, and then here is your muffler. Now, one thing to point out is that the muffler in this actually contains sound deadening. So when I run this later, when it gets dark and starts to get cold, I'm going to run this thing and I'm going to video it and show you guys. You will see how quiet this thing is. This is the quietest diesel heater that I have ever used. It is so quiet. It's amazing. Most of these mufflers are just hollow. They're just pieces of metal. They're just for looks. It's almost like they're trying to trick us into thinking that we need it. But I've run a diesel heater with the sort of pass-through mufflers without it, and it didn't really sound any louder to me. This thing, when you were running this, you can't even hardly hear the ticking of the fuel pump or anything, and you can't really hear any noises. It's so quiet. It's just the blowing of the air is all that you hear. So I've actually been really impressed with it. That plugs in again right over here on the side to the exhaust. I'll show you that here in a second. Then you've got these straps that you can click to open. This is included with it. So they give you this elbow, and then they give you another elbow. They give you this, which I think is a 3.5-inch elbow, and then they give you this smaller elbow, but it's too small for the tube that I use, so that is just something that I'm keeping as an extra. They also do give you the hose for it, and then they give you these little end pieces. So they give you like a vent built in, so you don't have to buy an aftermarket one. Now, I have this really nice 3D printed one that gives you some more control over where the air is pointed, and it zips into your zipper. So I did add this, and then I also bought this tube. They give you one of these size tubes as well, but it's not as long. It's only maybe 3 feet long. This thing is 10 feet long. So I basically bought this myself, and this piece here, those are the changes that I made to it. Otherwise, it's all LF Bros stuff. But then I just basically clamp this down onto here, and I just leave this all attached. So again, when I get to camp and I'm ready to set this up, this actually is really nice. You can see these little divots here on the side. It actually allows you to like twist this on. So I'm doing this left-handed and one-handed here, but you can basically do that, and you'll hear that click there, and then it's locked on. And then, of course, I'm going to run this up into my tent, zip that into the zipper, and I'm good to go. But it's just that easy. You just click this on. Again, I leave this stuff all set up. I leave my tube attached. I leave my vent here on the end of it. And then there's plenty of room in this bag just to then put it up here and basically strap it in with these little clips, which is awesome. I love how easy that is to use. But that is literally all that I'm keeping in the bag. That's all that I'm using on a consistent basis is the muffler, the exhaust tube, and then, the air blowing tube to get it up into my tent. And then, of course, my power cables, as I mentioned, are already in my truck. So I just hook those up and I'm good to go. Now, diving into the other stuff that it comes with, as I mentioned, you get this smaller elbow, you get this vent, air controller, and a tube that comes with it. Now, there is a bigger tube that I didn't bring with me and a bigger vent piece for the bigger elbow. But so you do get both. So you have both options. If you wanted to use the smaller tube, you could do that. If you want to use the bigger one, you could use that. It comes with an AC power supply too. So if you didn't want to run this off 12 volt, you could also just use this, and then that will plug into this power source right there. So if you wanted to run this to heat up a garage or a shed or something like that, you could do that off AC power and basically have unlimited power. Now here is the bigger vent piece. So that again goes with the sort of stock tube that comes with it. Then you get this controller. Now I actually should leave this controller in the bag because I do use this. This is how you can control, aside from the remote, this is a way that you can visually see what you're at, and you can control it through this plug as well. Now this plugs into the controller switch right there. When I install this in the back of my truck, I plan to just keep this controller either up in my tent all the time, maybe running like a clam or something and drilling a hole in the bottom and putting this up in there so that I can control it from my tent. I may just put it inside the cap, and then I'll get it to whatever I want it at, and I'll go up into the tent and I can use the controller from there if I need to adjust it, fine tune it. But that's kind of my plan, is to build this into the actual bed of the truck so I don't have to mess with it. I can have it hooked up all the time, 24/7. When it's cold and I need it, boom, just kick it on, ready to go. But I will show you this again when it gets cold tonight. I will turn this on. I'll show you that in more detail, kind of what it displays information-wise, and I'll give you the pros and cons of this as well. Now you do get a ton of hardware. As you're going to see here, there are, you know, little exhaust pieces. There's all kinds of clamps and stuff. So when I install this in the truck, I may use some of these metal clamps to sort of hold the exhaust in place to make sure that it's pointing down out of the bottom of the bed through one of my drain holes. You've got this power cord here. This power cord has the proprietary sort of power supply end on it, so you could power it that way. But it comes with a ton of hardware. You get tons and tons of ways that you can hook this thing up and use it. All right, so now that we've kind of talked through the features, we've talked about dimensions, I've kind of shown you how I set mine up and how I run it. I want to talk to you a little bit about pros and cons. I wanted to break this out as a separate section so it's easier for you guys to find if you're looking for this information. I will include chapters down below. Pros and cons. Pros of this thing, super, super quiet, super reliable. Sealed diesel cap, right? Automotive grade fuel cap is a game changer for hauling it. I've been hauling it in my floorboards because, you know, again, I've had it in the bed of the truck. It's gotten all dusty and stuff. The last few times I just put it on my floorboards in the front passenger side, and no leaks, which is great. So those are definitely all pros. The other thing is I leave the cap on all night, and however they built this thing, it vents itself, it figures it out. Whereas with a lot of the cheaper diesel heaters that I've had, and I'll throw a card up here to one of the videos that I did recently on it with tips for cheap diesel heaters and how to run those and some of the problems you're going to run into. This thing will run with the cap totally sealed all night. There is no fuel starvation or anything like that that I've seen on the less expensive ones where they starve themselves out and they'll shut off in the middle of the night. This thing doesn't do that. Keep the cap on totally tight all night long. It's run all night, hours and hours and hours. Now, as far as cons go, there are a few. This does not have an app. There is no app. That's not a huge con for me because I'm the type of person that I set it, I turn it on, and I get up in bed and I don't mess with it anymore. Again, with the remote, you can turn it up and down. You can make adjustments to it with the remote, but you do not have a phone app. And a lot of these nowadays have phone apps. I know people like smartphone apps. We all have smartphones. We keep them with us all the time. I've got it in my tent. I'm playing around with it when I'm sitting up there enjoying my diesel heater, right? So having an app where you could see all this stuff, again, not having to run this corded unit up into the tent would be a nice feature, and I would like to have that. So that is a con for sure, that it doesn't have an app. Another con is, and this is going to talk to fuel consumption here, I ran this thing the first night at about 2.5 kilowatts. It will go up to 5, so it is a 5 kilowatt heater. I ran it for the first night. I started it at about 8:30 at night, and I ran it on 2.5, which I was like, oh, that's not even the middle, right? It goes from 1.4 to 5 kilowatts. So I ran it on 2.5. About 6 o'clock in the morning the next day, it shut off. So I got about 10 hours out of it, and it went through the slightly more than 1 gallon of diesel that this thing will hold in 10 hours. And I was like, holy crap, that is a lot of fuel consumption, right? Like usually with the cheaper diesel heaters that I've had, I can run it about 2 nights on a tank. I may top it back off the second day just to make sure that I don't run out of fuel that second night. But that's about the fuel consumption that I get, is about 0.5 gallon per night. I ran through this entire thing again in 10 hours. So that is a con for sure. If you're going to run this on higher levels, if you're in colder temperatures, you're going to run through more fuel. Now, the next night, I turned it down to 1.4. So I turned it down to the very bottom. I was still sweating. I was super hot. It was perfectly fine. It was like low teens probably that second night. I had plenty more than 1/2 tank that next day running it on that low. So just be aware that if you turn this thing up, you're probably going to be lucky if you get 9 or 10 hours out of the heater. So again, I would keep it about 1.4 to 2 is where I would keep it on your settings to be able to run it. But at 1.4, it will run 12 hours, no problem, on less than half of this tank of fuel. All right, guys, so I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of just how quiet this thing is. So, you know, if you're familiar with most of these diesel heaters, at night, you just constantly, from all your friends' trucks and your truck, you hear tick, 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 tick of the fuel pump. But with this LF Bros, just the sound of the fan. I mean, there's no ticking whatsoever. I mean, I'm right up next to it. So I just run it at the lowest setting. It's plenty warm for me. But again, this thing starts up every single time. It's super simple, super easy to use. I turn it on, I get in the tent, I don't worry about it. So just to give you guys a little bit of an idea of how quiet this LF Bros heater is. It's the middle of the night. You can hear the wind blowing from the tube. There's no tick, no noise whatsoever. It's actually pretty awesome. So that was the LF Bros diesel heater. Again, I really like this diesel heater, and I've had 5 or so in the last 9 years. So out of all those that I've had, this is the one that I'm most impressed with. I've been really happy with it. I don't feel like I need an app. If you feel like you need an app, this may not be the right diesel heater for you, but I just kind of turn it on and let it run. The other nice thing is they're sold on Amazon. So if you did have a problem or anything like that, it's really easy to get a refund, and I like that. So again, hopefully that was helpful for you. If you have any questions, post up in the comments down below. As always, in the description down below are links to my social channels, my website, where I've got funny overlanding camping themed stickers and patches. So check those out if you're into that kind of thing. There are also links to all my featured partners. These are just companies that I really like their products. These are things that I've used for a long time. Those are things that I am comfortable saying, this is a review, this is a good brand. If you're looking for good quality clothes, check out Livson. If you're looking for good quality tires, the Nittos are awesome, or Kendas are awesome. You know, all those things in the description are super awesome companies. So if you're just looking for some recommendations, if you want to find some brands that you can trust, the featured partners below are awesome, and you should definitely click through those links and check them out. And then of course there's a join button below this video. That's just a passive way to support the channel. You get early access to the videos. It helps me make more content. Or if you want to be more involved with all things overlanding, there's a link to my Patreon page where we've got a 24/7 Discord. We all kind of chat. We have got once a month Zoom call that we do, and we're trying to meet up in person once or twice a year to have some fun, sit around a fire and drink some beers too. And then last but not least, there's a link to the Newbie Overlanders Facebook group. Totally free to join, over 21,000 members. It's just an awesome group, different from the big groups because there's no bullying or anything like that. We're all just trying to help each other get out and explore more. But again, I hope this video was helpful for you. If it was, click that like button. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure to click that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time.